Hello and welcome to Maximum Disc, a show where I fly the flag for physical media and talk about some films that I own on Blu Ray and 4K Blu Ray. I'm James Adamson. I'm a co-host on the Double Reel Film Podcast. If you like this chat about physical media, please do check out Double Reel. It's a magazine-style podcast where we talk about various topics and films. We reckon you'll tune into any episode and get some great recommendations of new and different things to watch. But that's enough sales pitch. Let's talk about physical media. First of all, why does it matter? This is the first episode of the show, so let me talk about that in a bit more detail for a minute. If you care about a film, you need to own it. You can't rely on streaming. I'm talking about people who, stream legally here, but people would like to think that everything they could possibly want is at their fingertips to watch at any time, but that's not really the case. You'd be surprised how many times, if you're looking for a specific film, that it's not been shown anywhere, not even to rent or under any circumstances. And even if it is, it might be censored, like when Disney cut all the racist language out of French Connection, which means that people could watch that film and not realise how bad things were in the 70s, which is a problem, and people should be free and equipped to watch the real film and make their own mind up. Even if it's not censored, is it the proper director's cut or special edition, which really makes the film work? If you're streaming it, probably not. But most importantly, it's not going to look and sound the way that it's meant to on a file that they've compressed down to the lowest possible bitrate to get down an internet pipe. You need to own it on disc. And when you do own it on disc, hopefully you have the space, hopefully you have the time, but it's a lovely thing to be able to just reach up, run your hand over the films that you own, pull one of them down, have a look at it, look forward to the next time you're going to watch it. So hopefully I'm preaching to the choir on that. So that's why we're going to talk about physical media here. What I'm going to do is, on each episode of this show, is talk about one film that I own. Obviously, the reason people tune into these things is to ask, is it a good film? What's the audio like? What's the video like? Is it worth investing in a physical disc to buy it? I will talk about that. Obviously, we'll go into the audio and visual quality of the film. I won't get into the technical details the way some people do. There are people who are equipped to tell you whether the pixel rate is right in one corner or other of the screen. They're able to kind of measure the different shades of black. That's not me, but I will hopefully be able to give you a little bit of insight into the quality of the picture. What I'm also going to talk about is the relationship I have to the film, the experience that I had watching it the first time and then subsequent rewatches, what it's like to watch it now that I own it on disc and so on, just to give you some thoughts on the film about, why you might want to own it yourself. So for the first episode, the film I'm going to talk about is Civil War, which I own on 4K Blu Ray. This came out in 2024, written and directed by Alex Garland. First came to fame as a novelist, wrote the book The Beach, which was adapted by someone else into a film, but it kind of got him into the industry somewhat. He became a screenwriter and then a writer-director in his own right with things like Ex Machina, Annihilation, Men, and then this. It's set in a possible near-future USA in which a civil war has broken out, and that war is seen through the eyes of war correspondents and journalists. The main cast, the lead is Kirsten Dunst as Lee, a war photographer, named to a degree after the real-life war photographer Lee Miller, who was very prominent in World War II. She was a pioneering female war correspondent. Wagner Moura plays Joel, a war journalist who partners up with Lee on assignments. Kaylee Spaney is Jesse, a young aspiring war photographer who joins up with the group. And Stephen McKinley Henderson is Sammy, an older veteran war journalist who hitches a ride with them as they go on their journey to follow the war. Nick Offerman plays the president in a supporting role that I don't want to talk any more about because I don't want to give away the plot of the film. This was an A24 production. The video and audio is what we're sort of primarily talking about, I guess. So let's mention the people responsible for that. The cinematographer, director of photography was Rob Hardy. He did Annihilation with Alex Garland before this, and he's also responsible for the photography on Mission Impossible Fallout. So this is someone you bring in when you want your film to look pretty impressive. The sound department, in researching this film, I found out that a lot of people work on the sound for a film. 41 people are credited. But the people whose names were given out when it was nominated for awards were supervising sound and editor Glenn Greenmantle, who won an Oscar for Gravity previously, re-recording mixer Howard Bargroff, sound mixer Mary H. Ellis, and co-supervising sound editor Ben Barker. So if you know your sound people, these are the people responsible for this film. Speaking of awards and nominations, this was kind of overlooked by the major awards people, which I think is an injustice, but not that surprising given the kind of film it is. Ironically, it was nominated for an award by the Washington, D.C. Film Critics Film Critics Association for Best Portrayal of the City, which, given what happens in Washington, D.C., did surprise me. In terms of a plot summary, it's about an actual civil war, the kind of civil war that you've probably watched on the news in like the Balkans or in various war-torn third world countries has come to America. Democracy has failed, the political system has collapsed in on itself, a tyrannical, demented shit-gibbon has seized control of the White House, turned on his own people, started killing them, war has broken out, and everything has gone to shit. Who knows where Alex Garland gets his ideas from? I don't know how he could imagine such a scenario in the USA right now. The film itself features the war correspondents and photographers that I talked about, journeying into kind of the heart of darkness, pun intended, of the war. I think there is a reference point to Apocalypse Now in the way this film's made. They journey from New York City, which is somewhat war-torn, towards Washington, D.C., which is at the centre of the war. The rebel forces are about to take over. There is a rumour that the president's about to fall, and they want to be there to record when it happens. Lee, played by Kirsten Dunst, wants to take the photographs, and Joel wants an interview or a quote, but he wants to report on what's happened. They head in there accompanied by Kaylee Spaney's Jesse, who is a young, aspiring war photographer who looks up to Lee, and Lee sees the younger version of herself. At this point, Lee is a person who's reached her limit. She's traumatized. She's haunted by flashbacks of all the things that she's seen. She sees a younger version of herself about to embark on the same life and has very mixed feelings about it. Joel just wants a quote, but he's in the middle of all the blood and bullets as well. Sammy, the older war journalist, he's not really fit to do this anymore, but he doesn't know what else to do with himself, so he hitches a ride as well. And as they head into the countryside of sort of northeastern America, heading from New York to Washington, D.C., they encounter various tense and life-threatening situations where militias lurk around every corner. Some towns have been taken, some towns have been spared. The next time they stop, they don't know if they're going to be shot at or if they'll have any food or have any fuel. And the nearer they get to Washington, D.C., the more into the intensity of a horrifying war on your doorstep they get. The film is intended to be that, journalist's eye view of the war, but also, I think, talk about the issues currently facing America at the moment and what would happen if everything broke down and people did make war on each other. And it's quite a warning in that sense. I'll talk briefly about the disc itself. It's the fairly standard Blu Ray disc. It's not a steel book or a special edition or anything. It's got two discs, one with the film in 4K Blu Ray, the other one with the film in standard Blu Ray and the special features. They're just the standard things, a making of documentary and a Q&A with director and cast. So it's not overladen with extras. I'm not too bothered about that personally, but if that is the sort of thing you're looking for, you might want to wait for a more of a collector's edition of this film. So my background watching the film was, I was very excited to watch it because I'm a big fan of Alex Garland. It seemed to be speaking to the times. It came out in the middle of 2024 with an election looming, a lot of tension around that election, a lot of division in America right now. The trailers looked really impressive. I thought this is going to be really good. And when I went to watch it, I was not at all disappointed. I thought this was a haunting picture of what can happen in your own country if you allow it to get to that stage. Watching a civil war, outside your window is very different to watching it, thousands of miles away. And perhaps human beings should think about that the next time they see a civil war on the TV. It also beautifully renders what it's like being the person taking the pictures, being the person at the front line, but you've got a camera, not a gun, and you're right up close with the bullets flying around you. So I thought this was a great film, really impressed me. It was, in fact, my favourite film of 2024. I think it should have been a Best Picture nominee. That's how much I liked it. The reason I've bought it, I try and buy my own very favourite films on disc. So 4K Blu-ray is a bit of a no-brainer for a new film that's just come out that I want to watch. Sometimes you're asking questions about, is this film worth watching on 4K rather than Blu-ray? Should I upgrade my old DVD copy of this? Bit more straightforward this time. I did want to wait for the price to come down. I have noticed that when a film's just out on 4K Blu-ray and is a more recent film, it's often very expensive to begin with. So I was trying to use all the willpower that I had to wait for the price to come down, checking it out on eBay and so on. Eventually the price did come down, so I bought it. In the meantime, I was doing what I think people like me often do when they're deciding whether to buy a film on 4K Blu-ray. I was reading those online reviews to see what other people thought of it. And the reviews are very favourable, so I thought I do want to watch this. So bought it on 4K Blu-ray. Very pleased to have got it. My question I was asking myself on a rewatch was, Did I only like it the first time because it's just so topical? I mean, now the election's over and the dust has settled a little bit. I mean, a possible civil war, I guess, is still in America's future, but, would the novelty wear off with the second watching? So I was thinking about that when I was sitting down to watch it again. What's the first thing we want to talk about? I guess it's the video. This is where I really wasn't disappointed at all. It was very, very impressive. Alex Garland shot this on digital. The cameras that he used were a combination of 6K and 8K. That's about as much detail as you're going to get from me on that. So there's no discussion of whether the grain is preserved from the original film or anything like that, but it looks incredibly cinematic. They've done all the right things with the digital footage, but it's incredibly high resolution, so it looks absolutely stunning. The impressive visuals are, I would say, reference quality. This is the kind of thing where you'd say, yeah, this is a reference quality disc where you want to really show off the sound and vision of your system and see how it works with the really very best picture. I think this is up there with those. The video is absolutely pin sharp and superb. It's not flashy though. I mean, they haven't really gone into kind of lavish visuals and special effects to kind of show off. This isn't really a show off kind of film. For example, the first scene that you see that, war has hit America is a single column of smoke rising from a building in the city, and then there's an explosion out the window, and Lee looks out the window and barely registers it. So they don't go over the top with like massive CGI renderings of like Boston or New York has fallen apart, but it does shock you. Bullet holes in an overpass and tanks and abandoned shopping centres. It does bring that home, but I think it's quite subtle in the way that it does it. But the visuals are beautifully composed, and the quality of video really does bring it home. That works especially well when they stop in all of these different places, and there's this eerie tension everywhere they do, and there are lots of still images of like terrifying situations that then explode into violence. Alex Garland's very good at that sort of thing generally, and I think what he realised with this film that you needed to do to make this story work is to get across that it's about the power of the image. Lee is a photojournalist, and Jesse, who follows her around almost like a puppy at the beginning, they're there to get that image that tells the story, that one photograph that is the magazine cover, or the I guess the meme that goes viral these days that shows you what's happening in the war today. So when they're going through the countryside during the day, I think the main way that the video sort of shows off how good it is the countryside, lots of green, lots of sunshine, showing what would have been maybe quite beautiful places to visit before, but are now very war-torn. That's very vivid, that's very striking. There's a terrifying cameo with Jesse Plemons in some small settlement on a farm somewhere, which is really shocking, and the video is beautifully captured. The image is superb. But where the film really starts to flex its muscles in a couple of things, there's one night where they're driving through fire and it seems like everything's on fire. Pieces of kind of leaf or tree or something are just floating through the air. There are like flames floating in the air around the truck. That's very striking. And then there's a helicopter flying over this very impressive looking landscape, and everything else looks like a little bit third world and broken, but the military hardware looks brand spanking new. I think that's quite a striking image. And you follow this helicopter as it flies over a lake and trees and forest, and the film kind of takes you from there into that final push onto Washington, D.C. And that's where you have the really amazing night battles with explosions and contrast of dark and light, really beautifully shown in this, and that's very striking. Perhaps the most impressive thing in the video is the way that Kirsten Dunst is portrayed. Her performance is brilliant, but also quite bravely, I think, for a woman in her 40s in Hollywood. She's not afraid to let the camera show all the lines and the bloodshot eyes, and the fact that she's just really fucking tired. She's just had enough of all of this, and the film has lots of close-ups of someone who's had enough, and that's really powerfully rendered, especially when you have that powerful close-up next to this shocking war breaking out in the capital city of a country that's supposed to be at peace normally. On the whole, you get lots of great shots of the war, the way that a war correspondent would capture them on camera. You have sudden kind of stop, slow motion or still photographs of the action around you, and it captures what they've just seen in their camera. That's very powerful. Facial expressions of the journalists and the people caught in the war. Really, really powerfully done and really impressive. So maybe people didn't realise this was going to be a reference quality kind of video, but it really is. The sound too is incredible. For the most part, there's some big explosions at the beginning, but there's a lot of really excellent use of silence, because they stop in these places, in these towns on the way to Washington, D.C., and it's silent for a moment and then it explodes, because you never know what's around the corner. You never know what the attack is. But then where you really get a workout for your sound system on your home theatre is, as they're readying the final attack on Washington, D.C., the helicopters and tanks are like roaring past and there's a rumbling of the earth. And then you get into D.C. and there are explosions and there are bullets flying, in front of you, behind you, all of which is in the service of the film, but it's very, very powerful. So overall, this is a highly recommended film. The film itself, I love. Like I said, it's my favourite film of 2024. It did have its critics. One of the biggest criticisms was that it didn't really go into who's on what side. And some people thought that was like a cop-out or not really, fully addressing the divisions and the politics in America right now. But I thought that was exactly the right thing to do, in fact. What it's actually saying is, if you're watching a country in the Middle East or Africa or the Third World and, learning for the first time, frankly, about the civil war over there, it doesn't really matter who the rebels are. It doesn't really matter who the government forces are. What really matters is the tragedy of seeing a country torn apart like this. And when you're seeing a country, that's on fire and you're seeing a town that's covered in bullet holes, there was a time when that town was at peace and now it isn't. And that's really the powerful sort of message you want to take away from this. It's not, you can't just say, oh, it's the other side of the political divide from me. Who's to blame for all this? I'm just going to sit back and not be responsible. This is actually saying everybody in the middle of this is going to be caught up in this war. So what does it matter whose side you're on, really? I really like the pacing of the film. It's very deliberate. You head to the centre of the war like an apocalypse now, which I mentioned before. I really like that war correspondence perspective. It reminded me of some older films that I've watched and enjoyed in the past, like The Year of Living Dangerously with Mel Gibson and Sigourney Weaver, and Salvador with James Woods, which did a similar job in a very different way. The final question, I guess, is this an essential purchase? You've been listening to this. If you believe me that the video and the sound are really good, the next question is this an essential, film for you to order and get on your shelf sooner rather than later? For me, it is. Like I say, it's not so much about showing off the visuals. It's because it's a genuinely superb film, but the visuals are genuinely reference quality. I suspect that Annihilation by Alex Garland is the film you would consider if you want to see him really go to town on colour and visual atmosphere and that kind of lavish visual. But this is really beautifully done and very powerful. I also think that it's, with everything going on in America, I think it's a timely film. It's a timely film for people to watch. Maybe it's a bit controversial. Maybe not every service wants to show it. Probably a good thing to own your own copy. But, perhaps, the way in which he's approached the politics of the story might put you off. Maybe you don't want to watch a film like this. But I think for a really genuinely striking picture of a country at war, this is as good as it gets. So I would highly recommend this. And for me, it's definitely essential. So I hope you enjoyed this chat. As I say, it's just me talking. I hope I've kept you engaged and you've enjoyed this talking about the quality of the film and whether you should buy it. If you've enjoyed this chat, please do check out Double Reel, and ways to find the podcast on our socials will be on the screen in a moment. And I'll see you next time for more physical media chat right here on Maximum Disc. The Maximum Disc YouTube channel is brought to you by Double Reel, the monthly magazine podcast for the discerning film nerd. If you like our celebration of physical media, please check out the podcast for more chat about the films we love and hate.